Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tony Pellegrino, and this is part of a live tech talk we do every Tuesday and Thursday here on Facebook. I'll give everybody a minute to get on. We've got a lot of stuff that I know people want to talk about today, and we'll just give them a second to get going here. Of course, I'm here to talk about your favorite subject and mine, Jeeps. So, as always, we welcome your questions and comments. So just make sure you include the model year, your Jeep, and everything that I can better answer the question. Let's see, featured product today. What did we decide we were talking about? Oh, it was a JL cargo rack. So let's spin around and talk about that real quick. And I just want to show everybody what we did and how simple it is. Hopefully that will work. All right, this should be good. This should be good. All right, we made, I'm assuming you can zoom in over here, some nice brackets that you literally just pop off this piece of plastic. On each side there's threaded inserts already into the factory roll cage. This gives you the ability to put some brackets on that we made and adapts our cargo tray. Our cargo tray, it's loose right now because I wanted to show you how it's got some adjustment to it front to rear, and then it's got 7 positions up and down. So it'll really give you the ability to fit your favorite ice chest or refrigerator underneath it, but still give you plenty of space to divide your cargo as you get ready for your camping trip. So pretty nice. I just wanted to show you how easy the brackets were and pretty clean on the inside. Again, all made for the factory Jeep JL roll cage. So that's our featured product. Any questions on that, or we'll spin right around? All right. Awesome. Okay, today's topics are going to be suspension, specifically rear suspension, and upcoming Jeep events that you might be interested in. So let's cut on to that. All right, this represents a typical rear suspension in a Jeep, right? So it's got 2 upper control arms, 2 lower control arms, and a track bar. A lot of the time they give you a track bar relocation bracket if you've done a lift kit to try and keep the track bar flat, which prevents the Jeep, like as the suspension goes up and down, from feeling like it's going back and forth. What we kind of call that swing set effect. So typical, you know, everybody makes a lift kit for this. It might be what you have on yours. I'm just trying to explain the basics here so that you guys can follow along. So this is a 4-link with a track bar. The next one is going to be what we call a single triangulated, even though it looks pretty double triangulated, a single triangulated 4-link. So this would be similar to our Legend suspension or our Tracer suspension. So the upper links are more triangulated than the bottom. The bottoms are actually pretty straight. And this works really good. It gives you both good on and off-road handling characteristics with a minimal amount of rear steer. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The next would be what we have on our JK Elite or the new JL EXS, which is a full double triangulated rear suspension. You can see the upper links are much more triangulated along with the lowers. And this will give you the best performance off-road, and we'll talk about the reasons why we do and don't offer this for the shorter wheelbases, okay? All right, so here's a typical obstacle. This is called Escalator in Moab. This is on Hell's Revenge. This is a pretty classic obstacle. I know it's probably a little bit dark, but you come up, you dip down, your tires are gonna get wet. You need to steer over, and your passenger side rear tire has to stay on this wall in order to get you out of here. The front tire is pretty easy. You've got the steering wheel and you can move that around. This is where an upgraded rear suspension is going to make a difference, okay? So if you're just going straight up something, you're not going to see that much of a difference. If you're going to start really articulating the suspension and trying to do obstacles like this, you're going to see a big performance difference if you go away from the standard style and go to a single or double triangulated rear suspension. All right, so here's, unfortunately, typical guy, right? He's got that factory style 4-link plus a track bar. What happens is the rear suspension, when it cycles, it steers away from the obstacle. So this poor guy really was going to have a tough time. He was going to have to get really high and kind of compensate for it in order to get his Jeep to do it. Now, people learn how to drive, they do, and they can work around those inefficiencies in their particular suspension. In this case, this is how most people end up. So it's unfortunate, but we see this a lot. Any questions so far?
Some off-topic questions, yeah.
Okay. All right. And in the really unfortunate case, they look more like this, where it's the other guy we could save with a winch. This guy's really going to need a few winches to get him unstuck and out of there. So hopefully that's not you. All right. So here's part of what happens. If you're on a shorter arm rear suspension, the rear tire tends to, as it opens, it tends to tuck forward. Now, in addition to this, it's also steering the rear axle because the links are so short that it's having to steer at the same time. This is unfortunate, right? Because now the vehicle feels very unstable and very unpredictable. And that nobody likes that, right? We all like our vehicle to feel very well planted and positive and predictable. So I'm just trying to give you guys some perspective on what this looks like. All right, here's another good example. Hopefully they can see it, Alex, where that rear tire is really steering in and away. Now, this is a longer arm style suspension, but still a 4-link with a track bar. So, and since this picture, this gentleman is upgraded to the GenRight suspension, so that's why I'm using him as an example. So good example here. And this is an LJ, right? So it's even got a longer wheelbase, but still not long enough to compensate for that. All right, so now you're on the Rubicon. You come up on the soup bowl or soup can, whatever your group calls it. This is a pretty good obstacle, and this is how most people end up. Because what's happening is they need to be climbing with the front wheels, but the rear wheels are steering them off the obstacle. And they keep going back and forth trying to get up on there, but they just keep moving over. So I'm trying to give you guys some real life examples of where this kind of thing can really change the performance of what you're doing. Again, you can see a little bit of that steer. And what you really want is you want the wheels steering the other way. You want this to guide you up onto the obstacle, okay? So just trying to give you a few examples here. Again, here is lower, well, this is actually upper El Dorado, but the beginning of it. And somebody coming through, and this is where you can see his rear tires way down here in the hole, right? So you need this tire to be steering you up on the obstacle. And that's how it's going to get you through there without you having to do a bunch of overcompensating for what the suspension's not doing. Here's a great example. So this is one of the better ones where you can really see how much rear steer is in this thing. And it's just one of those things where I see it all the time, but I don't typically get pictures. Unfortunately, this is one of the ones that we got, where you can really see how much that axle's steering. Again, lots of suspension designs. Everybody's putting bypasses and all this stuff in, but you're limited on what you can do back here and try and keep everything working like it should. Again, you know, I'm always looking to see where is that rear tire helping to stay on the obstacle, or is it steering down off of there? So when you go back and look at pictures of yours, you'll be able to see, is it helping or hurting? And here's one, you can see how that rear axle's walking under, and that wouldn't be helping. Just another trail shot, you know, typical, you're in a canyon, you need to stay on the walls. These are all important aspects of, you know, what you need your suspension to do. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Here's another one where now the guy's in the mud and he needs his tires to climb. So, you know, again, you're gonna want that performance out of the geometry on your suspension. Another friend of ours, you know, I think this has got double triangulation. So again, rear tires helping to stay on obstacle. One of our tracers, where you can see the tire is just barely gripping on there. Great example, and you can see that tire is dead straight running forward with the side of the Jeep. That's a nice shot there. More pictures, just again of articulating and where is that rear tire going. Again, one of our elites. Any questions so far? Yep.
Brad Ponce, does the left spring style suspension have less to no rear steer versus short arm? Question mark.
No. Typically, you know, a leaf spring is really about the same length as a short arm suspension. And, you know, a lot of these with coilovers are going to have a bigger range of travel. So what happens is when the suspension articulates, it's more exaggerated. So, you know, leaf springs are incredibly simple. They typically keep, you know, that axle pretty straight, but they will walk as well. So really having a good linked suspension. And, you know, here you can see, you know, he's barely hanging on, and you really need that suspension to track nice and straight and keep you on the obstacle. More questions or doing okay?
Keith Crum, what do you recommend for the best ride height?
Well, some of that depends on, you know, how much fender clearance you have, you know, what kind of Jeep you have. Typically, I think what's happened now is everybody talks about low center of gravity, and that's typically in that 3.5 inch lift range. And that's where I've got the aftershock right now. That's where the Terremoto is, right in that range. And you really want to keep them pretty low and have a lot of droop when you're out crawling like this. And that'll help the center of gravity and the stability of the vehicle. Yep. More, Deb, or?
Nope.
No? Okay. Here's another example, you know, of just what it looks like. You can see the front axle's going the other way, the rear axle's going this way. And, you know, how the double triangulated forelink really keeps this thing nice and square underneath the Jeep. And that helps a lot. This was a Jeep built by one of our dealers out in Redlands. And here's one of our employees, Keith Lyon, in his CJ with our Legend suspension. So this is a single triangulated, and this works really good. I think he's at like 103 inch wheelbase, I think is what he said. And again, you can really even make an older leaf spring vehicle converted over to coilovers work really well. And I think he's just said he had this done for like 13 years. He's been wheeling it like this. So yeah, pretty cool. There's the Terremoto on that same articulation ramp that everybody's seen all over the country. And you can see how even at full articulation, that wheel is going nice and straight forward. So a characteristic of a good handling Jeep. That makes a big difference. Very predictable, very positive while you're out there on the trail. More questions?
Yes, Jordan Pellegrino would like to know how much rear steer does a stock YJ on leaf springs and 40s have?
I don't think it'll have very much because there's not much travel. He can't trim enough to make it work. You know, back when I was first building the Growler, before we even called it the Growler, it was just a YJ, and I had it sprung over and was trying, you know, all the tricks that everybody does. And there was just, by the time you got the leaf springs flat enough to really flex, there was so much spring wrap that I was destroying U-joints and just encountering all kinds of other problems. Even though I increased the leaf pack and did a bunch of other stuff, it just, it was much easier and time better spent to just link it and be done. You know, keep in mind, we've got on our Legend kit, that rear link kit bracket is only $99. So we've still got some great deals for those of you that are thinking about this. Now, obviously, you still got to build control arms and do all that stuff, but you know, you're talking about being able to build a rear suspension for relatively cheap. So, yep.
Gabriel Pyle, what's the best way to get lots of droop without much, if any, lift?
The best way is
2015 JKUR on 35s.
So this you got to be careful with, okay? On any Jeep, not just this one. What happens is that your drive shafts, your steering components, you know, the drag link and the tie rod, you're going to start maxing this stuff out. You can't just put a 16-inch shock on something and go, oh, look at all this travel I have. It doesn't work like that. You will over travel and end up breaking, you know, your sector shaft, your tie rod ends. There's going to be something, your drive shaft U-joints, that you're going to destroy. Your stock Jeep is set up with about a 10-inch shock, and that's a good range of motion for what it is. Now on a JK, it's longer, right? So that actually helps your ability to stretch out versus a shorter like a TJ. So, you know, you just want to make sure, but most people like to set their vehicles up for droop. The downside is that if you want to go fast at all, you're going to be on the bump stops a lot. Now, the reason they do that is because it helps it feel more planted and positive, because you're on kind of a bump already when you go to get up something. But you just need to know that you can't go fast. So it's all part of the setup and what you're trying to do. You know, we like to go out to Johnson Valley, where you might have to go 30 minutes of hauling to get to the trailhead. Well, I don't want to be out there at, you know, 5-10 miles an hour, ding to ding to ding to. I want to be able to haul. And that means you've got to have real suspension that can work fast and then get on the trail and still have it work right. So that's part of what I'm trying to educate everybody here on. And, you know, look, you got to make the best decision for whatever you're doing, right? So I'm just trying to tell you what the different options are and what the advantages and disadvantages. When we did our Tech Talk survey, this was one of the top questions. Can I explain the difference between, you know, a 5-link, a single triangulated, and double triangulated? So that's what we're doing. What else you got?
Nicholas Rupert asked if the GenRight corner guards are required for the rear tire carrier.
No, they're not, but I highly recommend it. The reason is that you're just clamping to sheet metal, right? And you're talking about hanging, you know, potentially 150, 175 pound tire on that. And you really, now I'm assuming we're talking CJ, YJ, TJ, LJ here, because the JK and the JL are completely different. The way that the mounts are made, the way that they tie into the body, those are totally different. So those do not require corner guards. It's, again, a nice thing to add. You should have corner guard protection if you're really out wheeling, but on the CJ, YJ, TJ, LJ guys, they should really have corner guards on there too. Yep. What else you got?
That's it.
Okay. All right. We will keep going then. Here's another Jeep on the same rack. You know, you just looking at the different I want to show you guys several different suspension styles and what it looked like. I was trying to give you like side-by-side pictures. It's really hard because I normally don't just stand there with a camera. Again, another view of our Jeep on here. And I think this was 1080 was our ramp number on this. Ideally, you want to be at 1,000. 1,000 or better is considered good or excellent. And what I saw this day that we were there was anybody that did over 1,000, those vehicles were absolutely sketchy. They were floppy and, you know, really unpredictable is the best way I can put it. So I know Jamie was there with me this day when we were looking at all these and just going, man, you know, sure, you can go to 1,200, but don't dare try driving that thing anywhere. So, and more guys and gals, you're having to get on the pavement to go somewhere, to get on a trail and then return on the pavement. So it's fewer and fewer places can you just offload it off a trailer and get to the trailhead and get back. So just keep that in mind. What else you got?
The gentleman, Nicholas Rupert, who asked about the CNRs for the RTC, has a JKU.
JKU, yeah, no, so he's fine. We make a heavy-duty tailgate hinge that incorporated into our tire carrier bracket, and all of that bolts into the inside of the Jeep and does not require a corner guard for that. Yep.
Vaughn Huffman, what is your ideal up travel, down travel values for a rig that can do both Baja and rock crawling?
Okay, this is a more complicated question because it really depends on how fast you want to go. If I'm setting up the Terremoto for like racing King of the Hammers, I want about 4 to 5 inches of up travel. Knowing that when you're going through the whoop-de-doos, it never actually settles back down to that. It stays at like 6 inches. If I'm just going out for a weekend with my buddies and we're just gonna go mess around, I like 3 inches of shock shaft showing. And if I'm really kind of serious rock crawling, then I'll lower it to 2. So that kind of gives you an idea. James, do you know what yours is? Where are you sitting at?
Probably like
3 or 4, yeah. So that's kind of the standard around here at GenRight. And you know, we also build a lot of anti-squat into our suspension. So when you get on the gas, it's really helping to keep the suspension open as you go through the bumps. So that's a more complicated and technical. We did a whole thing on suspension terminology, and you can go over to YouTube and watch that video. It's one of our tech talks that we had a 7-part series on terminology. So there's a lot of information in there. Yeah.
Kevin Hudson, rear tire carrier on the JKU. Do you have to weld driver's side brackets on or use the prefab aluminum mount? I've seen pictures of both.
Yeah, so it depends. You don't have to weld anything if you don't want to. You can use, we call that the latch side. That's where the 2 pins go through. On the latch side, that's prefabricated, and you can bolt that onto the body or onto the outside of a corner guard. A lot of our customers want us to just weld the tabs onto the corner guard just to clean it up a little bit. It's an option, and I think the tab kit's like 15 bucks. So it does require some know-how to do it, right? Because you've got to get the tire carrier fully installed with the tire in it, close it before you weld those on, because if you don't have the tire in there and you weld that on and then you go to close the tire carrier, it's not going to work. So just a little bit of heads up there. But if you're interested in that, get the corner guards, talk to one of my sales guys. I'm not sure if that tab kit is on the website or not, but we sell them all the time. Super popular upgrade. And a lot of our builds, almost every build that comes out of here, the customers want them welded on. But you don't have to. What else you got?
Cody Erickson, what's the max recommended length for single triangulated rear 4-link aluminum 2006 TJ?
Max length, that's a good question. I know Ricky from Jeepers Den did our double triangulated cross member on his, and he runs really long links on a stretched LJ. And that thing did great. You know, he was climbing everything he pointed it at. So the big advantage, I don't know, let's see if we can go back and see it. I guess you really can't see it here. One of the things I was going to show you is that these lower links are tucked in, so they don't sit on the outside. So when you go over stuff, you don't really hit them. And that's one of the other big advantages to the double triangulated. So not only does it move more bind free, right? There's no resistance in the whole thing. Everything's tucked in, so it's a nice way to go. But what I would say is too long is when you start bending the links, right? So if you're hitting those links all the time, they're too long. You got to find that happy medium where you're able to get up the stuff that you want to go on, but you're not just continuously hammering those links. You want the obstacle to come through the bottom of the vehicle and catch the tire. That's a super important aspect. Come through, catch on tire, not on the bottom of the frame or the control arms, okay?
Keith Crum, what do you recommend for a 2010 JKU on stock axles?
As far as a suspension, really, you know, you could go with anything. You're going to be kind of limited to 33 or maybe a 35, and so you're not going to go with very high lift kit. In fact, I would go with the shortest lift kit I could, and I'd put our fenders on so you can keep the thing really low. Our fenders open up the fender well, and typically what I would do is like our 1 3/4 puck lift or like a 2-inch lift. If you go over that, then you got to do something with the drive shafts. You got to do something with the steering. You got to do something with the brake lines. Like you just start opening up Pandora's box. And if you're going to do that, you might as well go to 37s, right? So you just where do you stop is kind of my point. If you're not sure, I realize, you know, on a program like this, we don't have the time to go into all the detail for your specific rig. Call in and talk to my guys. Andrew, Jeff, any one of the guys over there can help you. And they do this all day long, talk people through, you know, what they want to do, what size tire they want to go on, and what your budget is, because a lot of that plays a part. Obviously, you know, if you're going to be going to 37s, then you got to do something about axles and lockers and gears, and where 33s, you know, you can go a lot of places and get away with it, especially depending on, you know, where you live and where you're wheeling. So, yep.
GenRight Dave, what's Tony's opinion on radius arms for daily drivers and light wheeling?
You know, I know a couple of people. I've got a friend out in Colorado. His name is Matt. He loves radius arms. The radius arms kind of act like a sway bar. You know, they provide a certain amount of resistance built in. I'm not a huge fan. You won't find those on any GenRight vehicle. What happens is that I see them when they're out on the trail and they rip off the upper link mount, or they're ripping something apart. There's inherent bind. You want to get to a double triangulated, especially if we're talking about on the rear, or if it's on the front, a 3-link with a track bar, because that takes the bind out, so you're not just torquing and twisting on everything, and that's going to give you longer life in not only the brackets but all of the joints and the rest of the components, and it's going to feel good because the suspension's not getting to a point where it's got to like break loose to do something. It'll make the vehicle feel really fluid and good. Yep.
Jeff Yeager has a 93 YJ. What's the best way to install corner guards, with pop rivets or bolts?
No, if we're talking about like our full length corner guards, the bolts that we provide in there are the best. You really want to secure that quite well, because what you're trying to do is distribute the load over the side of the vehicle. And I think Keith has got them on his. Let's go over to Keith's here. So when you run bolts, and I think we've got bolts every like 6 or 7 inches, that really secures the panel on here. And we use flush mounted bolts. So if you do end up hitting it, it's gonna skim across the top and not dig in and catch on things. But when you distribute the load, you're actually improving the strength of the sheet metal back here. So it really helps a lot with the durability. Yeah. So whether it's steel or aluminum. And by the way, we sell a corner guard backing plate as well. I think it's like 25 bucks. If you're interested in that, you should, that adds some extra strength back there too. And it keeps you from messing up this edge if you ever need to put your top back on. What else?
VB Tom 2006 LJR 3.5-inch long arm on 35s. I want to go to 37s. Would it be better to go 5.5-inch lift springs or high clearance fenders?
Yeah, high clearance. That's a great question. High clearance fenders all day long. I really don't want you to go any taller. You really want to keep that stance, go with the what we call high fenders or high clearance fenders, and you will find that solves two things. Number one, you get more clearance under the axle, right? Because you're just running a bigger tire. So now you've got more ground clearance, and you only raised your center of gravity 1 inch. So, but it's going to feel a lot better and really work well too. So you'll be super happy with that. Yep.
Chris Larson has a 2020 4-door Eco Diesel JL Rubicon. I'm assuming if I get the basket and eventually upgrade to the GenRight roll cage, it will still fit.
Yes. Yeah, what'll happen is we'll have new mounts that adapt it to our roll cage, and the basket will still work, and I think the brackets end up being like 50 bucks. So not bad. And you can always sell your brackets to somebody else who hasn't gotten a cage yet, and it's probably for the same money and basically cost you nothing to make the switch. Yeah.
Pat Whitney, hey Tony, I'm in the process of putting a 60 on the front of my 05 TJ LJ, stock 6-cylinder on coil springs.
Yep.
I do a lot of rock crawling in Moab, running 37s. Question is, should I do a 3-link or 4-link radius front?
So they have definitely a 3-link with a track bar. That's super important. And you need to do something that upgrades the size of the bolts. The factory bolts are too small. So when you add your new mounts onto your 60, you need to be running at least 9/16 diameter bolts that are double shear. That's super important to get enough strength in there. And you need to have 8 inches of separation between the upper and the lower link at minimum. So, because when you stop, the axle wants to roll, so you got to have enough leverage there for the suspension to hold on to it. So, those are all important aspects, and all of that is already incorporated into our Legend suspension. So, if you haven't already made your suspension choice, talk to one of my guys. That's the kit I was talking about. That's $99 for the bracket kit, and that'll get you well on your way. I think that's the frame side bracket kit, and then the axle side brackets are only maybe another $100. So, you'd be in there for a couple $100 and have the right stuff. That's all 1/4 inch thick, beef. So, yep.
Keith Silva, does GenRight offer a double triangulated front kit or cross member for a CJ with LS swap?
So I never recommend double triangulated 4-link in the front on a Jeep for this reason. What happens is it screws up the roll center, and the Jeep is constantly going to want to flop. You need to have one track bar or the thing will not side hill. So these are small details that the internet is all goofy on, right? Everybody's talking about, oh, you want double triangulated. And I'll tell you where I found this out was when we built our first King of the Hammers race car. We did a double triangulated 4-link front and rear, and we had to run sway bars and do all kinds of other stuff to fix that because the thing was such a wiggly worm. That's why I'm telling you, people that build these rigs just to go on a ramp, you're never going to want to drive those things. They're just floppy and all over the place. So we've learned, we've spent millions of dollars learning what the best setup is, and you got to have a track bar in the front at least. Yep.
Jeff Lone, how does having a tire on the tailgate or a GenRight carrier fare compared to having a spare in the cargo area flat for rear suspension and overall suspension feel? I have a 2010 JKU, and which do you prefer?
Yeah, good question. Let me see if I can find a picture here. Okay, so let's talk about, this is a good one, right? So anytime you can move the weight from, behind the axle, that's anything behind that axle is gonna haunt you. So you've already got your gas tank, but at least we keep that down low. That's an important thing, right? You want weight as low as possible and as forward as possible. Now, you don't want to put everything to the front. Then every time you go down a hill, it'd be like flipping over forwards, right? So you got to find that balance. Now, weight off the back makes a big difference. On the long wheelbases like this, it's not as big of a difference, right? So then you're talking about, does it encroach on your departure angle, right? There's other factors. If you put it in the back, that's great if you're talking about like a 37, right? Because a lot of the time a 40 won't fit back here unless you've cleared everything out, and then forget trying to even put an ice chest back there, right? Like now you have no storage to go camping or do any other kind of road trip. So it just kind of depends. A lot of people end up with the tire on the back because they need that cargo area. If you got a family or you're taking longer trips, you need that cargo area. But the weight forward is important. What I do is I just leave the weight on the trailer. Okay, I leave that back on the trailer, and if we're really desperate, we'll go back and get it. Otherwise, I've got a sewing kit, a plug kit, we've got air, and you just fix the tire right there. And worst comes to worst, you put an inner tube inside there and run it the rest of the way out. So, yep.
Michael Abdullah, 2006 LJ with a 5-inch lift going to coilovers with 3-link front and 4-link rear. Coilovers are 14-inch.
Yep.
I'm hoping I will lose some height in lift, will I?
You will. So this is important. We get calls like this all the time where the guy wants to do the 4-link in the rear and then later on do the 3-link in the front. Do it at the same time, because that gives you the ability to lower the overall height of the vehicle. So what you need to do is, it's all about where the shock tower is mounted inside the fender well or under the hood, right? If you move that shock tower up, it's gonna lower the vehicle. Now, what you gotta decide is how much shock shaft you want showing, and then that sets the height of the shock tower, right? So what I would do is get your Jeep on some jack stands with the belly at the level you want it, and then I'd build right around that. A lot of the time, what year did he say it was? Was it like a 2006? Was it a TJ? A lot of the time with a 14-inch travel shock, it's all the way up.
LJ.
Yeah, it's all the way up inside the fender well, so you can't even go any higher, and that's actually going to give you a pretty nice ride height. That's where Jamie set, the growler and stuff, so it really helps give that thing a nice low stance. I think Jeff ended up blowing through in his fender well, which means he then had to make mounts that went up onto the cage. So, just all stuff you got to think about. And hopefully in this process, you also have axles that are wide enough, because that's the other thing that people don't figure out is they buy some axles, they got the wrong width. Now with their bigger tires, they go to articulate and it's into everything. So make sure you cycle it and check all that stuff out before you end up with a big mess out on the trail. What else you got?
Ed Hines, Phoenix, Arizona, 2004 LJ Rubicon Express, 5-inch long arm with Dynatrac Pro Rock 44s.
Nice.
On Trep 37s.
Okay.
I'm not ready to go to coilover system, but have too much side-to-side movement when going slow on rough terrain. I have the lift kit springs and Bilstein 5160s. Should I be looking at a stiffer shock system or replace the front springs?
I would try, this goes back to the other guy that asked about this same kind of a question. You need to go a little lower. And what you need to do is get our high fenders. You want to go with that high clearance style fender, and you can drop this thing 2 inches, and that'll make it feel a lot better. Part of the reason that we go with coilovers is because it moves the spring and shock dampening right out to the wheel. So if you look at your suspension, the springs are under the frame, right? And the shocks are typically, there or inside of that. So you've got on yours, you know, you're going to have 12, 14 inches of leverage, where ours is right inside the tire, and that really improves the stability. So there's a lot of reasons why we make this jump. So another example, you know, you could buy better quality shocks, but you're going to spend probably $1,100-$1,200 per pair, right? And for a little bit more money, you can have a coilover. So you're right on that cusp. You know, if Jeeping is your thing, it's time to just invest a little bit more money and get it done right. By the way, everything you have on your Jeep right now, you could sell, right? Because it's all something that somebody else can bolt onto their Jeep. So you're right on that cusp of really making some hard choices. Call in and talk to my guys. You know, Jeff would be a great one to talk to, or Andrew. Andrew did the high fenders on his, and they both their Jeeps sit nice and low on 40s. So you'd be talking to the right guys and kind of guiding you down the path.
Gabriel Pyle, if you have double triangulated rear and single triangulated front with a track bar, do you need sway bars on both ends?
Okay, so if you're doing, you know, our coilover system that I just described, we're moving everything way outboard to the wheel, you can get your spring rates dialed in, get everything dialed in, and just like on the Terremoto, I run no sway bar, okay? Because now, just like you're looking at here, it walks through the obstacles, keeping the body flat. And you know, as soon as you put a sway bar on, when this wheel comes up, it's trying to drag this one, so that it's fighting the whole time, and you get what I call sway bar whiplash. So the reality is, by using the track bar in the front, and I think this is where you're going, you still give yourself the ability to side hill. See, when you do double triangulated in the front and the rear, the vehicle just flops, right? So because you have no side resistance, right? No, your roll center is completely in the middle and jacked up. So by putting the track bar on, that gives you that ability to side hill. Now, where everything is mounted from there will give you the additional stability, or you got to run a sway bar. Yep. And again, talk to my guys. They're, you know, obviously if you called in and you were stumping them, they'd put you on the phone with me, but for the most part,
that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often.
Kevin Cavallo, can I use the Tracer center section as a starting point for my non-Tracer DIY 4-link, 3-link kit on my 05 LJ?
You'd have to call in and talk to my guys. That wouldn't be something that was offered or available on the website, because we'd be breaking up a kit. So you'd have to call in, talk to them, and see if they could separate that out for you.
We don't normally do that.
We don't normally do that. So I understand why you'd want to do
but
that.
It'll depend, on his application.
Yeah. So talk to them.
Okay. Michael Abdullah added, yes, he has full width Dana 60s.
Yeah, so that's good. That's the mistake a lot of people make, is they just bought, you know, whatever the standard width was, and it's not quite wide enough. You really need to be, for a 40-inch tire, you need to be 70 inches surface to surface, mounting surface to mounting surface, or what they call WMS.
Our top fan, Kevin Hudson, asked
Nice.
if we can have a tech talk on a body swap to GenRight chassis, JK and LJ. Like, how involved is it? He's asking for a friend.
Actually, it's not that involved.
Can we do a tech talk on it?
We can, but very simply, what I can tell you is this. When you buy a rolling chassis from us, it's already got all the brake lines, all the fuel lines, everything's plumbed. So all you got to do is drop in your engine transmission transfer case and set your body on and plug in the few wheel sensors and stuff that are necessary and put some gas in it and you're ready to go. So it's if you're hustling, you can do it in 3 days. So it's pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Do you have any more material to cover?
Let me see. Oh, here's another angle of soup bowl or soup can. This is, he's got our Legend suspension coming up through there. And again, you need your rear tire to track and get you up on the obstacle. Super important. Here's Terremoto in the same obstacle. And you can see my front tire is just about to start climbing. Remember, I don't have anything hanging down that's going to get me caught. So the bottom is completely smooth, and it allows that suspension to just work its way through the obstacle. And been through there many times. I know there's a video somewhere, either on the GenRight channel or on my YouTube channel, of me just like walking right through here. So here's another guy. You can see that hole down here starts getting deep. So, if you can't get enough bite on the front, you're just going to get sucked in. And if you slip off here, you end up on the lid over here. So, if you haven't been to the Rubicon, this is one of the fun obstacles. Hardtop Alley. Okay, this is a little dark to see. I don't know if I have a better picture or not, but super important that the very edge of your tire bites on this. By the way, I don't know if you saw last Friday night, the driver's seat. There's a brand new driver's seat video of me driving our Aftershock JL through this obstacle, and you can see it just walk right through here. The rear tire climbs up perfect, and they've got some great camera angles on that. So if you get a chance, check that out.
That's on
YouTube.
Netflix,
YouTube and Amazon, Facebook. But YouTube is probably the easiest to find. You just type in driver seat and Tony or driver seat and Aftershock, and it'll pop right up and you can check it out. Here is, if you've never been to the Hammers, this is what they call the plaque line on Sledgehammer. And again, what's important here is that when this drops out, you want it turning a little bit. This is one of the characteristics of a double triangular four-link, because this rear tire's got to climb out of this hole and up onto this rock. So again, once you start getting more serious, all of these little things make a difference and either allow you or deny you getting through this stuff. See very few what I would call regular Jeeps in here. Most of it's buggies.
Can we pop in another couple questions?
Sure.
Tone? Stephen Horsch, can you add coilovers on a TJ with a stock wheelbase?
Stock wheelbase, but it's all about the width, right? So you have to have from the inside bulge of the tire. Alex, can you see right here? From the inside bulge right here on your tire to the frame has to be 5.5 inches. Okay, so if you don't have 5.5 inches, when you go to articulate, it's going to get the tire into the coilover shock. So we make, the deepest mounts. We make all the right parts. So as long as you've got that clearance, or you can get a more offset wheel, that's going to help you. But remember, offsetting the wheel increases your scrub radius. So it's fine on the rear, but it's really going to screw you up at the front. So that's why a lot of people are going with the wider axles, because then you can go with a super deep backspace wheel. Yep.
Frank Schicitano, he's purchasing new 40s by 13.5 for 2015 JKU on Curry Extreme 60s.
Perfect.
Any pros or cons for either MT Baja Boss MT or Nitto Trail Grapplers? They're both options.
Yeah, they're both, you're looking at both good tires. The Mickey Thompson is a little bit lighter tire, and the sidewall is more compliant. Again, Alex, if you can, if you look at the sidewall on this, you can see you can't budge one on a Nitto. Like it is like it's welded solid. So this, I'm always looking for a nice compliant sidewall that's gonna squat out really nice and get that tire to flatten out, and that increases the contact patch on the ground. So Nitto tire's tough. So if you live in Arizona or you live somewhere that's really rough on sidewalls, that could be a better choice for you. But I still like how well the Mickey Thompson complies, and we don't get a lot of flats. So I might just be more sensitive and not drive by braille, but I don't know, seems to work. So, but great question. What else you got?
Kelly Sims was laughing at all the yellow in that last picture.
Yeah. I took Kelly and Shane through here about this time. This is like 2017, I think this picture came from. And they both did great getting through here without leaving any yellow paint. So they did a nice job. Let's see what else we got here. Here's Cameron coming up one of the trails in Moab. I think this was Green Day. And you can see his Jeep just flexed out there. Pretty cool shot. Okay, so now we're talking about, unless you have more questions, I'm going to move on.
It's okay. Go ahead.
So now I want to talk about the next events we have coming. The next event is called High Desert Roundup, or HDR, as a lot of us call it. It's right here north of us in Barstow, California. And the whole thing happens, this is the 247 Cafe, /X Cafe right off the 247. And really nice place. It's total gearhead Xanadu at this place. You know, they've got motorcycles. There's off-roaders from all over ride to this place for lunch, for dinner. Super cool if you've never been there. The trails around here are great. The direction we're looking in this picture, the hammers are a couple mountain ranges over, so you're out in that part of the Mojave Desert. And we always bring a lot of Jeeps there, and in this particular case, we were doing a bunch of tire stacking and just having fun. So, and I think that one behind me is Kelly's, if I remember right. So there's one for Kelly. So this is another trail that we run out there at High Desert Roundup. This is a great trail. These rocks have a ton of traction. They're like 40 grit sandpaper, man. They just bite. And this is a great run that we do with all of our guys. And camp, you know, from this picture, camp is like way back over there. This is probably, I don't know, 15 miles from camp, where we've gone across a desert and on this trail having a good time. So if you haven't been out to High Desert Roundup, it's not too late. You can still come out. It's this weekend. Registration opens on Friday.
How many Jeeps are we expecting so far? Ish.
I don't know.
Ish.
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't been in
Our
touch.
group's
pretty
probably
big.
25
25
Jeeps.
or 30, yeah. And we've got people coming from all over. So we'll have a bunch of Jeeps out there. If you're thinking about any of our products, this is a great place to come check it out. Maybe even get a ride in one of the Jeeps. Super cool. Everybody's friendly. Like I said, you can stay in a nearby motel. You can camp there. You can eat at the /X Cafe. It's relatively inexpensive, I think.
They do close early though.
Yeah,
so they're
they do.
closing at 6 p.m.
6,
so if
yeah.
you can't get there by 6, make your own meal
make your own
arrangements.
food, yeah. And but nice. You know, we usually have lots of games, you know, camp games, and we sit around by the fire and got music, and you know, we're just having a good time. So, and then so registration opens Friday. There's some runs Friday afternoon. There's runs Saturday, and then Sunday there's Jeep games with runs after that. So lots of fun. You can come out and wheel to your heart's content. Runs of all levels, everything from a Cherokee, you know, Grand Cherokee, all the way up to, you know, full rock crawler. So plenty of stuff to do, and we've got lots of, even some new trails out there. So if you're thinking about that and not doing anything this weekend, it'd be a great one to come to. After that, this is the games on Sunday. So we host a game that's called the Wet Lap, where the passenger holds a bowl of water and the driver has to drive through a course and come back with as much water as possible. So it's a combination of how fast you can get through the course
And how smooth.
and how smooth you keep the water in the bowl. So we have all different classes. There's UTV, men's, women's, automatic stick shift. It's pretty fun. It's usually one of the more popular games. So these games happen on Sunday, and there's probably 8 different games that you can go do in your Jeep. Very unique to this event. I don't know any other Jeep event where there are games that you
And
get
there's
to do
a
with your Jeep.
small fee for the games,
Yeah, there is,
very
yeah,
nominal fee,
yeah.
but the proceeds go to
Cal 4-Wheel. So this is the annual fundraiser for Cal 4-Wheel, one of the organizations that helps us keep trails open here in California. So very worthy cause, and you know, a great excuse to come out and hang out and have fun and do something good. So next event is in Grand Junction, Colorado. So this is called Rock Junction. It's a great event, depending on where you're coming from. You can wheel in a different area every day, and there's always, you know, like vendor booths and stuff. And this is the main hub is right off of or near 21 Road in Grand Junction, in a big lot that's probably, I don't know, 10, 20 acres. You can camp right on site. There's a big rock pile. I don't know if we have a picture of the rock pile. That picture got mixed in. Here's the spectators for the rock pile. There's the rock pile. And I've been known to give a few rides through there back when I was driving the Growler. Now that's all Jamie. So we'll see how Jamie does this year. There'll be a red hat instead of a yellow hat. So we'll see. It's a ton of fun. And I think on this day I gave like 100 rides. I mean, I was just loading one person after the other. So it's super fun. And of course, if all of that's not enough, go check out our videos on YouTube. We are on Facebook and Instagram too. So lots of good stuff. I appreciate everybody joining. It looks like Debbie's got
Got
one
a
or two more questions.
few last minute questions.
Okay.
Peter Doolin just chimed in and said he just made it to New Mexico.
Nice. So Peter's on his way from Virginia to join us at these next two events we just talked about. Thanks for tuning in, Peter. He's been driving over 600 miles a day in his brand new RV, towing his Jeep. So he's doing very well. He got parked before dark, which is great. And I don't remember where he said he's landing tonight in New Mexico, but Jamie and I have stayed many times in Tucumcari and gotten some gnarly storms while we were there. So a lot of fun. What else you got?
Don Cars, will GenRight make a mount for the SSV 6.5 speakers for the GenRight cage? He's got a 2010 JKU.
Yeah, that's the plan. We want to make sure we're incorporating in all this stuff. So I don't know if he's talking about the overhead ones or the ones that go in the back.
He just said 6.5.
I showed two different ones in the last two shows. But I can tell you this, you know, where we were just looking at my cargo rack a minute ago, you can still mount the speakers on top of those cargo rack mounts. So I'm all about having tunes out there. So and don't forget, Scosh makes a little boom bottle, and you can bring that wherever you want. It's Bluetooth, so that's pretty cool too. What else you got?
Peter Doolin, for people trailering, what do you do if one of your wheels starts smoking after pulling over, that is?
That's not good. So smoking is caused by the brakes are being engaged for some reason, right? Like your brake controller's whacking out. The tire is rubbing on the inside of the fender well, in which case it won't last for long. Bearings are low on grease, and you need to stop immediately, get some grease in there. Maybe it'll be salvageable, but highly unlikely. So I always carry a complete full extra hub because I've had this trouble before myself. And typically when the bearings go out, then it wastes the tire. Like you end up in this whole spiral of bad stuff. The good news for Peter is if he's having this trouble, it's midweek and he's in New Mexico now, so he can probably get parts. Yeah. He could probably get parts, yeah.
Frank Schicitano just installed your cage back seat. Doesn't want to sit all the way back to lock. Any suggestions?
So that would probably be in a JK or something, right?
He didn't say.
Yeah, maybe get a hold of one of our sales guys with some ideas, and you know, obviously they'll be able to look up your order and give you some more detail. But yeah, it sounds like something It just needs to be shifted. Either the seat, sometimes you can loosen up the seat, shift it in the mounts, or shift the cage back a little bit. So.
John Miller, love to know Tony's view on having a power tank mounted exposed. I'm guilty of it myself on one of my rigs.
Yeah, I see that all the time, where it's sticking out there. By the way, my friend Kelly Sims with the Silver Surfer, he used to sell industrial gases, and every time he sees that, he cringes. And he tells me how those things are literally like bullets, rockets, right? You bust off that thing and there's nothing gonna keep it. He's seen them shoot across all kind. I know there's videos on YouTube and stuff of that stuff happening. But yeah, you really don't want that to be the first thing that gets hit. And you don't want it floating around in your Jeep either. All you'd have to do is take one tumble and the head of that thing break off, and now in addition to you flopping or rolling, you got this rocket inside your Jeep. So yeah, good point. I discourage it. Power tanks are handy, but you really got to treat them with respect and make sure that can't get whacked. Yep. What else we got? I know we are out of time.
We are. Frederico Borda, some years ago, I bought a Rock Jock 60 for the rear of my LJ, made the mistake of standard width. I have seen Yukon do extensions for some axles to make them wider. Is something like that available for Rock Jocks?
Yeah, you can actually send the axle back to Korea, or there may even be some other axle companies near you that do what they call retubing the axle. They bore the center sections out, so they keep the center section, they bore the tubes out, put new longer tubes in, weld on new ends, and make you new shafts. So all of those are possibilities. That center section with your locker and your gears is the most expensive part of the entire rear axle or front axle. So, definitely possible to do that and do it right without, kind of messing it up. So, great question. We don't talk about that very often, but it's common to retube an axle. That's what it's called, retubing.
And where will you be doing Thursdays Live from?
Thursdays Live, I'm going to be out at High Desert Roundup, coming to you from Barstow. We'll be out there, and we'll have the Aftershock, the Terremoto, the Growler, Chaos, Banshee, Pay Dirt, like all of our rigs will be out there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite events the whole year. So if there's any possibility you have to get out there and join us, by all means do. And whether you come to just hang out and by the fire or want to go wheeling, anything, it's all fun. So hopefully you can join us. That's all we got for today. Thank you very much. And we will see you Thursday from Barstow in the Mojave Desert.